Welcome to this explainer. You know, when you see these serene, majestic Pure Land paintings in the background, you probably picture early monks as these completely detached, enlightened beings, right? Just meditating and chanting peacefully all day long. Well, today we're cracking open an incredibly rare ancient Buddhist legal docket that is going to completely blow your mind. Because the reality of early monastic life, it was deeply human, full of drama, and honestly, kind of chaotic. Today, we're going to see exactly how the Buddha used his immense wisdom to resolve some intensely dramatic and even downright hilarious real-world conflicts. Let's get into it.
Here's our docket for today. We'll be going through 5 main areas: sowing discord, the partying monks, the jealous resident, stubbornness and delusion, and finally, restorative justice. Let's jump right into the first one.
Case number 1, sowing discord. The instigators here are 2 monks named Panduka and Lohitaka.
Now, these guys weren't your typical quiet meditators. They were absolute experts at stirring the pot. Whenever they saw 2 groups arguing over a rule or some trivial daily thing, they didn't try to make peace. Nope, they'd sneak up and whisper this exact quote to them: "Hold firm to this matter, do not be defeated by others, win, and we will help you." I mean, wow. Just imagine the damage that causes. They were actively fueling the fire, turning minor disagreements into full-blown factional wars and making it literally impossible for broken relationships to heal.
So, what's the solution here? The Buddha implemented something called the act of censure. Basically, it stripped these troublemakers of their privileges, things like taking on disciples or receiving special respect. It wasn't about just locking them up. It was a targeted hit to their social status and ego. And this censure stayed in place until they genuinely changed their ways.
If you thought those 2 were bad, just wait. Let's move to case number 2, the partying monks, the chaos in the Black Mountain.
This features Assaji and Punabasu, and honestly, they were acting less like monks and more like wild frat boys. I mean, just look at this list. Against the backdrop of these exquisite, peaceful, Pure Land images, these 2 are out sharing wine with women, using their copper alms bowls as musical instruments, wearing heavy, fragrant perfumes, and get this, organizing underground animal fights. Dogs, horses, roosters, you name it. They were dancing and singing in the water. It was absolute, out-of-control chaos.
You really have to ask yourself, with the entire village and all these devout local families watching their supposed moral role models act so outrageously, how on earth could the Buddhists salvage the community's reputation? A simple apology definitely wasn't going to cut it for a public spectacle like this.
The answer was the act of banishment. The Buddha forced these partying monks to physically pack up and leave the region. It was essentially a strict quarantine. They had to be geographically removed so they couldn't corrupt the local lay community or spread their toxic behavior to the local families any further.
Okay, moving to our third case, which stems from a super relatable, almost petty emotion: the jealous resident.
This one stars a local resident monk named Uttara and a very wealthy, generous benefactor named Chitta. Chitta was incredibly generous, constantly supporting the monastery. But one day, Chitta invited a group of visiting guest monks over for a magnificent meal, and Uttara, the resident monk, he got fiercely jealous. His ego was totally bruised just because he wasn't consulted first, as the head local guy.
This jealousy spirals into a really bitter exchange. Uttara basically throws a tantrum, maliciously complaining about some missing sesame sweets at the meal. Chitta, not backing down, fires back by mocking him with a parable about a crow trying to sing like a hen. It's an epic burn, basically calling Uttara an arrogant copycat. Uttara gets so mad about this insult that he threatens to leave the monastery entirely. You cannot just go around insulting your biggest supporter. So the Buddha's brilliant fix for this was the act of reconciliation. This legally forced the jealous monk to go right back to that householder, swallow his pride, and humbly ask for forgiveness. It perfectly diffused the layman's anger while completely smashing the monk's arrogant ego.
Now we hit the climax of our docket. Case number 4, stubbornness and delusion.
We're moving past petty jealousy or wild partying to something much more dangerous: monks who flat out refuse to admit they were wrong. Take the monk Channa. He clearly broke the rules, but instead of apologizing, he stubbornly hit everyone with this quote, "I do not see the offense, how can I repent?" He was dead set on denying reality, completely undermining the community's rules right to their faces.
And this brilliantly highlights the 3 absolute deal breakers for the early monastic community: refusing to see your fault, refusing to make amends for it, or
like another monk named Aritha, stubbornly spreading dangerous, wrong views. Aritha was literally preaching that the Buddha's obstacles didn't actually hinder spiritual progress. If you let that kind of delusion slide, the entire foundation of the community just crumbles.
For this level of extreme, destructive stubbornness, the Buddha brought down the harshest solution, the act of suspension. This was complete social and religious shunning. The offending monk was treated as a total outcast. No one ate with him, spoke to him, or lived with him. It was a severe, final ultimatum to protect the community from toxicity.
But here is the absolute most crucial takeaway from all of this. Case 5, Restorative Justice.
None of these strict punishments, the shunning, the banishment, the forced apologies, none of them were meant to be permanent or vindictive. The single overarching goal behind every single disciplinary act we've looked at was simply to cultivate this: a mind humbled, remorseful, respectful, and softened. It was all about breaking down that hard, ironclad ego to find the soft, pure heart underneath.
Once a monk's heart actually softened, they went through a very specific, structured process to come back. They had to stop the bad behavior, show genuine remorse, approach the community barefoot, kneel with joined palms, and formally beg for the discipline to be lifted. It was a beautiful act of surrendering their pride.
They would kneel and plead, "Out of compassion, please lift this discipline from me." And if the community saw their transformation was real, they welcomed them back with open arms, no holding grudges. It really proves that this ancient legal system was entirely built on a foundation of restorative justice and deep compassion. Redemption was always the end goal.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. In our modern world, with all our online arguments, cancel culture, and fractured relationships, do our modern systems of justice and conflict resolution focus this much on creating a softened heart and achieving true restoration? It's something we really need to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I'll catch you next time.